want to start by just saying, first of all, thank you for coming. So excited that you're here. And then also wanted to welcome our guest, Denise Medlinka, who's actually a wonderful client and friend, and has been for many years. And Denise, would you just spend just a minute talking about some of your background and where you are today?
Yeah. So I am currently the head of people and some other things at Chubby's, and Chubby's is a men's casual brand. We like to say we bring the weekend back. We try to create the Friday at 5 feeling for everyone through our products. So it's a really amazing company to be associated with, and great culture, as well as just great products. I came to HR kind of in a circuitous route. I actually came through finance. So I started my career in something called internal audit, and worked there for many years, and then was looking to do something else, and had a great opportunity to move into HR at a previous company, and was then afforded a really nice opportunity to do rotational around the department. So I have really built my HR skills there, and love everything to do with HR now.
All right, so thank you. So Denise since I have known Denise, has had so many changes, and been with companies that have had so many changes in her own life and so on. And so as we were planning this, we've been doing a lot of work together, and I thought, you know what, she's got some really great examples of how we put this into place. So as we get started, I want you all to please write down, what is one habit that you would like to start? What is one habit that you would like to start or stop that would really help you in your own life? Because what I really want to do is I want to make sure that we're working on something that is really meaningful for you. And the other thing that to think about is, if there's something that you are that you've started and stopped and started and stopped, and yet you really want to get into it, or something that you really want to love more, write that down. And if anyone wants to share in the chat, you know, what your habit is and what you want to change in your life, then write it down. Because actually, from science, we know that is just one of the things that if we put it out there and we become accountable to it, that it is one of the ways that we make it happen. So feel free to do that. As we get into today's session, what we did was we pulled from so many different resources, and these are just some of them. The main one, of course, that was on the resources started from a Hidden Brain podcast, and then we went to referring the book by Katie Milkman that you see here. And it is so amazing. And I read the book and I listened to the Audible. Atomic Habits is absolutely incredible. And these are just, you know, all of these books have something to offer. And most of all, ultimately, it comes down to, here is the science, and then what do we do with it? So as we're going through today, please take notes to say, oh yeah, this works for me. This fits for me. Because where we'll end is that where your goal is, it's designed by you. So we're going to give you lots of tips as we go through and along, and it is totally designed by you. And we're going to focus on some of the things. Now, I'm curious if this fits into what you wrote down. One of these: temptation, impulsivity, forgetfulness, laziness, and not feeling confident enough. And then ultimately just making it stick. So would you write in the chat yes or no if your habit that you want to start, stop, continue, improve, that if it fits one of these categories? So yes or no? Yes or no? And I'm curious, which one do you think it is? So we'll talk about it, but I'm curious to know if you have an idea, like, this is why. All right. Okay. So I'm so excited to share this science with you, and I will tell you that I actually have my own tailor-made implementations, and so I'll talk about those as we go along. So first of all, we have to say, are we ready? Are we ready to get started in this? Are we ready to really get going in this? And one of the things that I want to share with you is something that from science is what is one of the ways that we could get started that is we may even take for granted. And on the other hand, we all know about it. And so I'm curious if you've made New Year's resolutions, if you have the Monday morning, I'm starting my new diet and all of that. Does that, yes, no? Does that ever happen to anyone? Okay, yeah. All right. So this is called fresh starts. You could write this down. Fresh starts. Now, fresh starts, what they are is that they are they're disruptions. So it is like moving. It is like a Monday. It is like a New Year's. It is like a new time of the year. A fresh start is a new job. A fresh start is, by the way, a pandemic. What about how when you motivate yourself, I'm curious, what are some of your fresh starts? What are some of the things that you have that you're like, oh, I'm going to start here? A move, a new going into a new coffee shop, working in a new coffee shop. Does anyone have something that you have as a fresh start? Okay, no more 0 days has helped you get stuff done, even on really bad days. Okay. May, what do you mean by no more 0 days, please?
So it's a phrase I saw on some, inspirational thing online. It just means that no matter how small of an improvement you're making, it's an improvement.
Yes.
So, not aiming for perfection. If it's one of those days when you just can't get out of bed, just standing up and stretching, yes. one of those kind of things. But it's also really helpful in a professional context where, I may not be able to solve this problem for you, but I can at least detail the information and get it to the right person.
Yes. I love it. I love it. And Denise, you talk about back to school. Your kids, Denise has 3 kids, and they just went back to school. So that is a fresh start for them. Something that that we notice, and they notice through science, is that through these fresh starts, what happens is we feel like, oh, I have this incredible clean slate. I have a clean slate. And because of this clean slate, it is amazing what happens. So it's like, it is almost as though with the clean slate, if you think about it, you just get to start again. Now, what's interesting about this is that if you go from one thing to another and you do get a clean slate, that is an incredible motivator. I'm curious if any of you have had where you've switched jobs. And Denise, this is, where I want to bring you in also, because you just made the switch to Chubbies, and you actually changed roles, and it's continued to change. And did you feel like when you went into Chubbies that you had a clean slate while bringing all your stuff, all your knowledge with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what's so interesting when you start a new organization, the prior organization I was there for 9 years. So I had, when you work, it's just you're creating relationships, right? That's what we do. And you're building those relationships, and they build through the work, and they build through the social time. And so it did feel that way. It was interesting because how I would normally have approached this. I'm a very social person, and I definitely kind of strive in that environment of just relational building. And but starting a new job in the middle of COVID and everything is virtual, I had to rework how you do that. And what's great about that is our company is actually a virtual first company. And so I went through this experience and was able to identify how you can actually do these things that we like to do in new jobs when they're there. And so everything from having time where people are sitting side by side in a Zoom room to making sure that people have a lunch buddy for the first week, because these are the ways that people meet people, right? And getting them connected. And so it did feel that way. It felt very much like I'm starting new and I'm fresh. And so each time you're meeting, just like anyone is when they start, giving someone that opportunity to come forward with what they want to say. And it's really kind of beautiful, right? We get to say our own story in that manner.
Completely. And I want to bring it back to some of the things that you guys did write down. Snacking, thinking when you're doing certain decision making, going from someone said start thinking from operational point of views when decision making. So when you do that, stop worrying about something that's happened and moving on. How do you implement a fresh start, and how do you say, okay, it's a clean slate? One of the things that just came to me is with snacking, get rid of all the food, clean out the pantry, get rid of all the snacking stuff that you're going to snack on. When you have a decision that you're making, when something comes up, create a trigger for yourself that says, wait, I used to think like this, and then create a new system and put it on your desk and say, this is my new process of thinking, and start asking yourself different questions. The stop worrying, that is a big thing, obviously, for me, is the mindfulness, is, taking a breath. We are here now. Clean slate, begin again, every single moment. So this is something that's really interesting. Now, I want to ask you something. What do you think about clean slates where you don't get a clean slate? You make a drastic change, and yet it's not really a clean slate. And in the book, How to Change, one of the things that they found was that if you don't get to have a clean slate, it's actually such a downer that it is the opposite of changing great habits or having a new habit. So when you don't, for instance, I'll tell you and we'll talk more about it because it fits into other things. But if you say, I'm going to shift and I'm going to go from where I am every day to vacation, and then your whole goal is to get on a great healthy eating and exercising, and your vacation is centered around people and food, and then all of a sudden you have now changed the habit to, oh my gosh, I'm now eating more. It actually is a downer. It actually affects us. And so be careful, and we'll talk more about that. Just being aware, though, that there are pros and cons. And so the awareness ultimately of whether it's a vacation or whether it's something, as I said, that's coming up that you are thinking, oh, this is my fresh start, but truly it doesn't reach your goal. So as we go on, I want to just ask you, there's so much. So I want you to just make sure that you are writing down, that you're taking notes. And if you have any questions, that you either raise your hand on this or just unmute and ask a question. So again, thinking about what it is that you are trying to do, can you set up a fresh start for yourself that is actually beneficial? So while I go on, and again, I'm keeping my eye on the chat, and if anything comes up, Jade will also let me know. So impulsivity, hands up. Is this an issue for people? You think you're going to do this, but somehow you do something else, and you're like, all right, I'm not going to eat the donut, and then the donuts are there, and then you're so excited you're like, all right, I'm going to have the donut, and so I want us to think about, well, what do we do? What do we do with impulsivity? And I want to talk about why impulsivity is actually an issue, especially when we think we have willpower. And by the way, I want you to please make a note of this. And I am going to make a note of it again later. And that is, willpower it really is a problem for everyone. And it is not about how much willpower you have or don't have. And what happens is, if you are a person who's like, why don't I have willpower? You will beat yourself up till the cows come home, because it's a thing. And to know that it's a thing, and to know that it really does affect us, that everyone has a problem with it. It's just a problem because of how our brain works. And how our brain works is that it goes into this default network of doing what we want when we want to, which comes into present bias, which is really a big part of impulsivity. So present bias is thinking about ourself right now. Ourself right now. I want the donut. I don't want the banana. I want the piece of cake. I want the chips. I'm tired. For me, I don't know about you guys, but you know, when you have your go-to food of tired, my go-to food is like, I love crackers. I have like, I don't even know why, an obsession with crackers. And I love cheese. So I love cheese and crackers, and then add some jam in there, and then we're all good. So, you know, now what do? I do not buy crackers. So present bias. So what do we do with this? We start to think about what is happening in our worlds that we are making decisions of one over the other. And so we're going to use present bias with something that they found that works really super well to help us with things that we are tempted by present bias. So first of all, I want you to write down what are things that that you feel are your temptations. Like what happens? What are your things that you say to yourself, whether it's the snacking or the exercising, that other things come up and you just pick whatever you want and whatever you feel like. So just start to think about that and write that down as we go along. So, and again, please feel free to ask any questions. So I want you please to note this term if you haven't heard of this. This is called temptation bundling. And what they found was that temptation bundling helped us with impulsivity and with present bias. And what it says is that here's something I really want. Here's something that I need to do. Like, for instance, I really want to watch TV. I really want to read a book. I really should go exercise. I really should get on my bike. I really should go to the gym. I really shouldn't. I need to cook dinner. I really want that glass of wine. And I really just want to, I want to hang out and just sit and talk and have my glass of wine. I really need to go on these, I really need to stop eating as many hamburgers as I eat or a certain food. So that's something I need to stop. And then hold that thought. I'm going to ask you some questions and we're going to talk about temptation bundling for you. So the first thing I had asked you to write down was, what comes up for you. So now let me get more specific. Write down what you love to do that takes time away from what you need to do. So I have a guy scrolling here. Are you someone who maybe you don't love to do it, but you find yourself stuck doing it? Scrolling social media, reading, some of the things that I mentioned. So just take a moment to write those down. Take a moment to write those down. Okay. Okay, I love it. I love it. All right. Being outside, watching movies. All right, so now what I want you to do with temptation bundling is write down the habit you're trying to start or stop, like exercising, staying focused, eating less, drinking less wine, whatever. And I'm pulling some of these examples from some of the books because some of the studies are really, really good, and they use some of this. So take a moment and either write it down, both write it down for yourself. Please write it in the chat, which is awesome too. It gets everyone engaged. Okay, so now let's start bundling. And Denise, what I want to do, you told me a story. I'm going to share this study, and then you told me a story about you and your husband, and I'd love you to share because I think that most, whether we have a partner in our lives or not, it could happen at work. And I think it's just so great about your walking. So let me just share this. Basically, what the studies of temptation bundling are are that we pair something that we love with a behavior that we're turning a habit into. So there are all these studies around giving people iPods and iPads to go to the gym and to work out, and then while they're there, they get to listen to their favorite story, or they get to watch their TV show. And so that is called temptation bundling. It is like saying, I'm only going to go to my favorite burger place when I have a really important meeting, or when I go out to eat with a certain friend. It is like, I'm going to do my social media stuff when I'm riding on my bike, or whatever it is that you do. It is taking things that are taking time away from your goals, pairing them with things that you can do together. So I want you, Denise, will you just share your story?
Yeah. So I love all these studies around habits. And so a few years ago, I started kind of down this path of, if I wanted to do something new, I try and do it for 12 to 20 weeks or so. And before you try to add anything on. And so I've done this with sleep. I've done this with yoga, and I did this with just getting out and exercising. So I have 3 kids, as Kim mentioned, and I had them in 3.5 years. So there was a lot of no exercise that happened for a long time, because you're just getting kids out the door and I work. And at some point I was like, I need to start moving. And so I just started walking, and walking was the easiest thing I could do, because I just had to get the time out of my house. I just had to walk outside the door and go. And so I started, and I was going, and all these amazing things were happening. Like when I was walking, I was getting, I all of a sudden I would get clarity on a big project I was working on, or I would get, I kind of joke, but it's like the best work hour of the day. I'm just, my brain, I get all the noise out of my head, and I can really focus. And so at some point, my husband was like, oh, can I walk with you? And I was kind of like, no, it's my time. I don't really like, but I didn't say that. I just was like, are you sure? And then, so he started walking with me, and I told him he had to keep up. So he was kind of jogging alongside me, and I'm going, and I'm trying to go, like, I walk pretty fast, and I'm going, and we would do this. We started walking every day, and he would join me. And what happened was, we started actually having the conversations that we needed to have, that we never had time for, because I mentioned the 3 kids and the 2 jobs. And so what used to happen was, at the end of the day, if one of us had something to say, it's like we're trying to do it when people are tired, and you're trying to have a conversation when minds are not fresh. And so we moved all that forward, and it just became like our normal walk. And so it just opened our communication. And it's a lot easier to talk to somebody through something difficult when you're moving and not looking straight in their eyes, because that's just an easier way to have a conversation. And so we've talked, not a whole lot of difficult stuff, but we have. And so anyway, it's worked out. So he comes, and now I get to just read my book whenever it's time to go to bed, instead of having to have any sort of deep conversation. So it all worked out.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Did you guys relate to that? I don't know if you can, that to me is like, it's so relatable, because it's like, when someone wants to do something with you and you're like, wait, this is taking it away. But it really is a great example of temptation bundling, which is just amazing. And here's another thing, as far as impulsivity, this is really interesting. When you say, I need to exercise, or I need to do my paperwork, or like Shara, you wrote, or I need to clean instead of doing this, that we have goals as we're thinking about this reward and this temptation bundling. We have goals that we have the goal. Sometimes we don't think about that there are so many different ways to go around the goal. Now, for instance, it's like exercise. You may hate going to the gym, and so when you don't go to the gym, you beat yourself up. So find another way. And I think that, ultimately,
I hate going to the gym. I hate going to the gym. I can't do it. And I used to do that. And so then I was like, what can I do? And mine, I have to be outside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and Paul, I know you love to be outside. I mean, there are lots of people in here who are like that's their thing. And then like I love to be outside, but I also love the gym. And some people are like, I hate all of it. So then you have to figure out, well, what is it that can you do? And ultimately, I think that Mary Poppins had it really right because
A spoonful of sugar helps the
I-
medicine go down.
remember this?
The medicine go down. Medicine
Because
go
what
down.
she
Just
did,
a spoonful of sugar helps the
what she did, and what the studies and the research shows us is that if we can have fun while reaching our goal, doing something that is fun for us, that we are more likely to stick and create that habit. And that is really, really important when it comes to impulsivity and when it comes to creating a habit that we are actually going to stick with. So that is, that's really, really important. As we go on to the next piece of procrastination, I just want to make sure that, does anyone have any specific questions about impulsivity and about that whole topic? I mean, obviously, you guys, there is one study after the other, so we just picked a few so that we could share and really start to think about how does this apply for you. And as we end that piece, just thinking about for yourself, again, what can you do that has fun, that is fun associated, that links your goal to the fun? What can you do to temptation bundle? So look at your two lists and really start to think about how you can temptation bundle, because the results are quite amazing. Okay, so procrastination. Anyone have an issue with procrastination? I know that I do. I have an issue with procrastination. So here's the thing. I want to remind you again, this is everyone's problem. And when I say everyone, I am quoting from all these books and all these resources, that this is not, okay, so while there may be a choice few of people, like a group of people who are not procrastinators, if it's something that you are like, oh, I would prefer to do something else, it's easy to procrastinate. And what they find also with beyond procrastination is that procrastination also fits into this idea of, I'm not going to do it because I don't see, I don't have the willpower, and not only that, I don't see where this benefits me. And so I'm going to choose to do what I feel like instead of what I think I need to do. And I think it's super interesting, especially because here we are doing this session, which is really in this self-help world, right, of growth. And they have broken it down. The researchers have broken it down, broken people down into two distinct groups. And they called the first group naïfs. And naïfs are people who are like, I don't need all this stuff about habit change. I have willpower. I can do this on my own. I do not need a self-help book. I do not need a coach. I don't need someone telling me what to do. I don't need a mentor. I don't need the diet. You see, that is that group. And they are overly optimistic about their change. And then the second group are sophisticates. And sophisticates have come to terms with their impulsivity. So I'm curious which one you are. Are you a naïf? Like you're like, I can do things by myself. Well, you probably wouldn't be here if you were a naïf. So a naïf. So, it is interesting though. Don't you know people who are like, I don't need help. I don't need help. I can do this all on my own. I don't need a system or a process. So I know lots of people like that. And then I know lots of people like this. And so that was one of the things that I thought was very, very interesting when it came to impulsivity, procrastination, and where we put it in with creating habits. So I want to talk about procrastination, and also the idea also of being procrastination. A lot of procrastination comes from that willpower of making one choice over another choice based on what we really want to do, not what we need to do. And I don't know if you guys know the story about Odysseus, and I love the story. So Odysseus basically is, in his what would it be? His boat, his what is it called? A sailboat. I can't remember the name. And he's going down, and they get to this area where basically it's this beautiful, beautiful singing. And the problem is that all of the boats keep wrecking on the shore. And Odysseus knew this, and he said, I want to hear this, but I do not want to go. I obviously don't want to wreck our boat, because then everyone dies, right? So basically what he did was he gave himself a commitment device. So I want you to write that down, a commitment device. And the commitment device was that he tied himself up, and he had his guys go underneath, and so no one could hear anything. And then the boat, he got to hear the beautiful music and the sounds, and they were able to sail by, and they did not die. And that it's the story goes more in depth, but the whole point is that how do you resist what you know is getting in your way? So how do you set up a commitment device? And I want to share a few other things about commitment devices. Here are 3 things that they found from science. One is personal handcuffs. And I love the story of Victor Hugo, who wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And basically what he did is he could not finish his book. And he was like, and his publisher said, you have to finish this book. And what he did was he locked up all his clothes, and he gave himself a shawl, and he did not go out because he was a major socialite. He did not go out until he had finished the book and given the transcript to his publisher. So what are your personal handcuffs? What can you do to set up, whether they're soft or hard? Can you say, I will have these days that I do X. I will not go out with people on these days. I will have my meetings on these days. What are the handcuffs that you're putting around yourself? I will not schedule meetings, and between those meetings and between certain times, I will only do this. So obviously it's about sticking to it, because Victor Hugo locked his own clothes up. I mean, he could have gone to his closet, but that was something that he did. If he gave his key to someone, then that was a handcuff from someone else. And the question is, what do you need?
Kim, this makes me think. So how many of you, like when you try to go on vacation, try to unplug? Does anyone unplug? I'm just looking to see if anybody's nodding. Okay. I see a little side to side too. So I always try to unplug. Just a tip, like a leadership tip. I think that if you unplug, it's a great business continuity exercise for your team. You can find out quickly what they know, what they need you for, and it's a safe space to entrust. But unplugging is, there are pieces of being plugged in that are habitual that I have found make it really difficult. And so one of the things I do when I go on vacation is we use Slack at Chubby's, and in my past we've been heavily email, and I uninstall the app. So I uninstall the app from my phone, because what I found I was doing is I would be, on a beautiful beach, like with this amazing ocean around me, and I'd have my phone and I'd take a picture, and then I'd just be sitting there, and my thumb would just automatically go over there, and I would be back at work in seconds. And so I just started uninstalling. So those are my handcuffs. I uninstall the app. And then I reinstall it when I get back, and it has served me very well. My team can obviously text me if they need me, but they never do.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. It's such a great example. I'm curious if anyone else has things that you do that are your personal handcuffs. I know for me, I shut down, and a few other people, shut down for Friday night to Saturday. And that's a shutdown, no work. It's just like, it's totally off. the next thing is, another thing is that you set up default, you set up little bites. So instead of saying, I'm going to save this much money, this is an example, I'm going to save $1,000 tomorrow. Instead, I'm going to save $5 a week. And what they found, I mean, there obviously, again, so much research around this. What we find is that when it comes to procrastinating, like I need to put away money, or even exercising, which is a big thing for people. I need to exercise for an hour. No, how about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes? I need to clean. How about I'm going to set aside 30 minutes today, and we do little chunks. We find that they have found that through science that this is actually a great way for our brain to handle it. And the last thing that I want to mention is a pledge. At the beginning, I said to you, what is your thing you want to change? Write it down in the chat. Well, there is a huge amount of science about accountability partners, about outward pledging. They did huge studies on voting and voter registration and people actually going to vote. So without going into the studies, the bottom line is who's your accountability partner for what you want to do? And how can you get each other to stick to it? How can you, I know that for some of you who are on here, we lead a mindfulness and meditation with the state of North Dakota, and some of you are on here, and I know that when you miss, I whether you like it or not, many times I'll text them because I see their faces and I'm like, where were you today? Are you okay? So we end up being an accountability group for each other to say, where were you? And so I want you again to think about what it is that you're trying to change and who can you make a pledge to. So as we go on to the next section, which we're going to talk about forgetfulness, are there any questions or is there anything anyone wants to share about this piece?
This is Sherry, and I like the bundling. Like for me, like I always feel like I can't start whatever it is I do until the house is clean. So it gives me permission to like clean a little bit, but don't spend the whole night cleaning and then get to my paperwork.
Yeah, I love that, Sherry. And just putting a time limit on it for yourself. And then later we're going to talk in just a few minutes about something else with habits that you give yourself permission. It's a big, big thing. So thank you for that. And yeah, it's about, it's about sticking to it and creating those habits, and at the same time giving ourselves a break. So let's talk about forgetfulness. Have any of you had something in your mind that you're doing and you literally are like 10 minutes before I'm doing this, and then when it comes to that time you completely forget? Does that ever happen to anyone? Yes, no? Okay, it happens to me. Jade will even say to me like, hey, we have a meeting in 10 minutes. And then she'll text me 2 minutes in and she's like, we're on the meeting. I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot. So one thing that Jade actually does, and it's actually quite amazing because it's very, very true, is to set those reminders for yourselves. And here's the thing, and I'll talk about those reminders, is there's a whole science behind reminders. So before we get to reminders, let's talk about cue-based planning. So you know how kids have little charts like this? Do this, then do this, then do this, then do that, then do that. Well, cue-based planning is the same. I'm curious, would you write in the chat? Are you, for those of you on the chat, would you write in, do you floss every day? And if you do you do it before you brush or after you brush? Okay. Okay, are any of you people who would like to remind yourself to floss every day? Would you write in yes if you are? Like you would like to floss. Okay, so a great example of cue-based planning is to actually decide, when I do this, then I do this. Okay, when I brush my teeth, I then floss. When I go to wash my face, I then floss, I then brush my teeth. And what you do is you set up cues that one thing happens and then another thing happens. So right now, I want you to go back to what you're trying to do, your habits, and think about what it is that you could set up for yourself that is a cue-based habit that would help you from not forgetting. And again, remember that these are habits that you're trying to create or changes that you're trying to create that are happening because you are forgetting. The other thing that I mentioned about the timeliness is, and Jade, like setting that alarm clock. This is really, this was really interesting to me. When you set an alarm clock for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour before, the likelihood that you will forget is pretty great. When you set exact time reminders, you will remember. And that to me was a very fascinating outcome of many studies, that it is a distinctive alarm. It is an exact time alarm. And that again, the way that we set up reminders is that we bite-sized, it's one reminder per activity. So again, I want you to think about what it is that you are trying to do, even on a daily basis. If you find yourself forgetting meetings or being late to meetings, how do you set that up? The brushing your teeth, how do you set that up? So what can you do that you can set up these cues that will help you with your forgetfulness? So any thoughts about anything that you're doing right now that you're trying to make sure that you don't forget? I will tell you a story. Recently, I had on the forgetfulness part, I had a meeting with a person who was, for many of you, you know that my kids live in Israel, and this person lives in Israel, and we had this meeting to get together. He goes back and forth to Dallas, to Israel, about getting together to see if I could work for his company. And I went over to, and I mean, I had been looking forward to this at this meeting. He was going to actually come to my house on a Sunday and just meet with me. So I'm like, all right, I have nothing to do. Didn't set a reminder, went off to a friend, thankfully, who lives like 5 minutes away. And he texts me, he's like, hey, I'm at your door. I'm like, Kim, how could you forget? And this was important. So it's not that we forget things that are important to us as well. And of course, I rushed home, but I could have and should have really, if I think about implementing the science. And since then, I have been really adamant, even with Jade prodding me and everything else, to really set some cues that are right away. Does this resonate with you guys?
Yeah.
So please,
yeah. Kim, a few years ago, I was trying to drink more water. Like a lot of people, I just was like, oh, am I not getting enough water? And and I heard someone, I don't know, someone being interviewed say the first thing that they do in the morning, they wake up and they drink 2 glasses of water. And I was like, well, I can do that. And so I started it. I do it every day. And the crazy thing about drinking 2 glasses of water is that it actually wakes you up, which I was not expecting. I just was trying to get my water intake, but I do it every morning. It's the first thing I do. It's so, and if I'm traveling in a hotel, I'm like, where are those little cheap plastic cups?
Right.
And you're just, but it does, it's like, it just is part of what I do, similar to how I wash my face before I go to bed. And so this cue-based reminders that works really good with kids too, because it's especially young kids, they have no concept of time, but if you can tie it to something, right? So if it's, the TV, you can have TV until dinner, after dinner, you don't, right? And all these things. So it really is helpful. I think this is how our brains work.
It is. Well, it is. It's exactly, that's it. It's exactly how our brains work. And I love that. It's funny. One of my habits, do you guys have morning habits? Anyone want to write in your morning habit? What I do first is, I heard that apple cider vinegar creates like a really great, not I heard, but I was talking to a nutritionist, and she said apple cider vinegar, a tablespoon of it every morning, creates this amazing pH in our gut. So every morning now, I literally get up, I put on my glasses, and I go to the kitchen, and I have a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. and I have a shot glass sitting out, and I have the tablespoon, and I just take out the vinegar, pour it in. I put some water in it and then down it with some other water because it's, you know, it's a little harsh. But it's really, it's a habit. So let's get into the science of laziness, because laziness can really is something that can really hurt us. And the thing is that when you look at our brains are like computers. We automatically go to the path of least resistance. If you think about a computer program, that's why computer programs are so good, because they figure out a problem in 5 seconds, whereas it might take someone hours, because they are going through an algorithm of how do I do it in the fastest way possible. Our brains are doing the same thing. Well, what happens when we do that is many times we take shortcuts that really hurt our habits. We also, when this happens, we also in our brain, we are not thinking about our goal. We are thinking about what do I want to do right now, and go back to present bias, go back to all the things that we've talked about so far, and realize that if we have defaulted into that this is what happens. And so one of the things, this is a guy, I don't know if you guys remember this face. He has passed away, but he was the father of infomercials, really, Ron Pompey. And he had this whole thing with this rotisserie chicken, set it and forget it. So this is one of the things that we found is set it and forget it. Set an alarm if you're going to do something every day and forget about it. Put your clothes out in the morning or the night before and forget about it till you get up, and then you put on your workout stuff if that's something you're doing. Make your lunch, put it away, grab that for lunch. Set it and forget it. Think about what it is that you're trying to achieve. Do it and be done with it so you don't have to think again. Because what will happen is you're hungry, especially if we're working from home and your brain says, I'm hungry, I don't have time. And what do? You go grab something. It may not be the healthiest thing, or it doesn't fill you up. So then you snack later. And this is a big thing. So I want you to look at, again, your goals and say, what can I, based on science, what can I do to set it and forget it? What can I do? Now, I want to share a really interesting study with you. There were two, so this is called elastic habits, and it could be really for anything. And I do want to share this one study with you. So imagine you've got two people. They actually did this with many people at Google, but imagine you've got two people. One person, both of these people wanted to create more health in their lives. So what they did was they put people together with personal trainers. So let's just take one person, and they say to this person, you are going to be with your trainer every single day or 3 times a week at this time. This is when you're going to create your workout. I want you to be on schedule. This is what you're going to do. It's creating a routine. After 30 days, you're going to have you're going to be set. They went to another person and they said, okay, you can work out again 3 times a week. You can be a little more flexible. If something comes up, just know that you have to get in those 3 workouts during the week. And after 30 days, you are going to be totally set. You will have created this habit. So it was really interesting because the people who did the research thought that they knew exactly what the outcome would be. And yet it turned out to be something very different. And I think about this, even Rochelle, when we think about meditating, what is our preference? Our preference is the morning. What happens if I can't do it in the morning? So I'm curious to know from you guys, what do you think, who do you think had the best results? Person A, who had a schedule, or person B, who had the flexibility?
I think schedule.
Yeah. So you want to hear the craziest thing? The craziest thing, some of you, and it's a little split. They were shocked, actually. I mean, Katie Milkman, who did, was one of the researchers on this, was actually shocked. And I will tell you that what they found was that for long term, the person B had the better schedule, because when things came up, they were able to flex and they were able to just do it. Person A, if they didn't actually do it between, let's say, 7 and 8 or the routine, they just didn't do it.
Ooh.
So yeah, so really interesting. how routines are amazing, and being in a routine is amazing as long as we are also creating some flexibility. And so what we really need to do is think about, how do we practice. It is like setting habits is a boot camp. It is saying, I'm going to do it over and over and over again to create the routine, the familiar. That is the key thing with laziness. We have to take that our mind doesn't even think. I know for some of us who do certain things, like people sometimes will make fun of me, like my routines, and I don't even know anything about my routine because it didn't start a routine. It was just important enough to me that I made things routine. So I want you to look at what are the habits you're trying to create and figure out how you're going to stick with it every single day to make it a routine. And then ultimately also it comes down to this confidence. And, Denise, just switching from not only what you did to like going from accounting to HR, from going from GameStop to Chubby's, to major different companies, and going from on-site pretty much like 30 minutes away from your house to COVID, number one, and number two, the company is based in Austin. Where did confidence, just a minute or so of where did confidence play in for you?
Yeah, I think it's that's a great question. I early in my career, because of the role I had a lot of interaction with executives, and they were just real people to me. They were just people, right? And you kind of see people in their element, and you see them, warts and all, as my mom would have said, right? So, and you just recognize them for just who they are. They're just humans, right? And a lot of and the other element that I think comes with me from that is this idea that I really do think we all show up thinking that we're doing our best job. And so I kind of take those two elements with me whenever I go into any situation. And I know that whomever I'm talking to, they most likely think that they are doing the best job they can. And they most likely have people's interests. They think they have people's interests in mind. There's obviously intent and impact are two different things, but I think going into that then helps me relate. And I just kind of, as I'm speaking to people, just always am trying to get an understanding of, what they're trying to do and what drives them. And
Yeah.
I get curious. And when you're curious about someone, what's interesting is that when I'm going into a new situation, when you're curious about someone, they somewhat own that stage.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of like acquiescing of the stage and the spotlight in the beginning to make sure that you really are getting to know people. And it comes, and then you're getting the real person and really creating those relationships. Because at the end of the day, the confidence and trust, which trust is the most important thing in the team, comes from knowing people and knowing that they're going to do what they say they're going to do, and they know I'm going to do what I'm saying I'm going to do. And so I think that early on, it's just, it's important that we do it. I do think there are times when, I may not have confidence in something, and I think it's just super important to like let someone know. Right. So if I'm taking on something and I'm not 100% sure, who do I have that can build me up in that skill set? Right. And like letting that know. That doesn't mean saying I can't do it. It's saying I can do this, but I'm going to need some assistance. And so I think it's just framing to recognize that when I don't necessarily have the confidence, it's just a learning opportunity.
I love that, because actually what Denise just said fits right into the science of confidence. And I think that this is really, really important. What they have found through the science is that our expectations determine our outcomes 100%. And that actually goes into what you were talking about, which is mentoring and about advice giving. And I want you guys to think about yourselves in this, is that first of all, the biggest thing that we find in mentoring is that the mentor has to believe truly in the person they're mentoring or coaching, because if they don't, the person feels it and they actually lose motivation. Yeah. And that is again, they found it through the science. And so we are surrounding ourselves with people who actually are helping us. which takes us into this, which is no unsolicited advice, because you know, I love to give advice. I don't know about you. It's like the advice monster, right? And the thing about advice is that when I give advice, it's really for me. It's not for the other person. What they have found through the science, again, is that giving advice is really for the person giving it, not getting it. And so finding out what the boundaries are really, really important. When it comes to esteem, the more people share, and Denise, this gets into your curiosity. The more curious you are, the more people share, the more self-esteem they build. And that is really, really important. Ultimately, also, this goes into conformity and what we find with social norms. And there are just two things that I want to say with all of this, with all of these habits. And that is finding people. So how do you make things stick? Finding people who you can cut and paste. People who are like us, we cut and paste. People who are not like us, we don't cut and paste. Meaning, find people who you see yourself being similar to. Say, who are they? What are they good at what I want to do? And then cut and paste. And this is a scientific term of creating habits. So it's looking again at people, not people who are not like you, because our minds look at them and say, they're not like me. It doesn't work. But finding people who we are similar to and cutting and pasting. And also there's something called the what the hell effect. And the what the hell effect is I've eaten one potato chip, I might as well eat all of them. And actually, when it comes to this, making things stick is that, wait a minute, give ourselves a mulligan. If I don't get that shot, give ourselves an emergency, like 3 outs, like 3 things, 3 chances, my 0 days. I'm going to have a day that I'm going to learn less and I'm going to learn more. I may not exercise this week because of this. I have 3 a month. Whatever it is, have an emergency fund for your habit, because they show that when we give ourselves a break, and it's a numbered break, we will get right back on track, as opposed to the what the hell effect. And so with all of this, as we're making changes stick, this is so important. Behavior change is not an itch. It's not a rash. It is like they attribute it, they equate it to chronic illness. And what they say is that it is an everyday thing. And I thought about this, is that when you have asthma, you have your inhaler with you all the time. And that's truly what change is about. It's about really sticking to it by surrounding yourself with positive people, surrounding yourself with people who are doing it. This was a big, big thing. And then taking all these things that we talked about and designing your own plan. And so we are on the dot of 12:30 Central. And obviously, please stay on if you would like to ask some questions. And Denise, thank you so much for being with us and sharing some of your stories as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And I know that, some of you who need to jump, please go. And otherwise, let's stay on for a few minutes and just talk about all this and see if you have any questions or anything that you would like to share. Anyone have any thoughts or questions?
Kim, I have a question.
Yes.
There was a time when I lived by my paper planner, and now, things are supposed to be on your computer or what have you. But, for a lot of us, we have like a work computer, and then, however we're managing our own. So any hot tips for just managing the totality of life?
Yeah, I think, Sherry, it's very interesting. I have both as well. And I personally find, and the research as far as getting things out and getting things down, and like what we did yesterday, Sherry, with the thought download is, writing everything down. There is something very powerful to documenting and writing down. And so I would, unless you live and die by your electronic calendar, I would absolutely have a paper calendar. And I want to show you, I mentioned this to you guys. I want to show you guys, hold on one sec. I actually got a new planner that I'd love to, that I'll share with you. It's called the Rote Runner, ROTERUNNER, Rote Runner. And it's ROTERUNNER. And I'll tell you, we did my son Benji and I did a huge amount of research on this because he is a planner person. And I will tell you why I got it. I got it because it says dream, plan, act, and achieve. And it's a purpose planner. And I'll tell you what it does, Sherry, just to your notes. Every week and month, it has the things that I have achieved, memories created, things I need to do better, learning and insights. It's got all this stuff. And also I want to show you what it has on an everyday basis. It has, let's say if drinking water is one of the habits you want to create, it has a little droplet and you can check how many cups of water. It has the 5 things that you want to do for self-care, if you want to do something for self-care and fitness. And it has a check off, a little box that has a check off every day. Did you do it? So you have an accountability to keeping your goals in this planner. And I really, really like it. So I'm a big, and I have obviously everything on my computer. I'm a big fan of paper myself. And here's my son who's 24. And really it's interesting. All these people, they're so computer, and digital savvy, and yet they're all opting and knowing that this is what's helping them do better. Was
Thank
that
you.
helpful? Okay. Anyone else have any questions?
I find that what the hell concept kind of interesting myself because it's really nice. And we're up in North Dakota today, for example, and I'm working from home. It's like, man, do I really want to sit here and work all day long or do I want to be outside? And I also needed an oil change on my car. And the places we go, they don't take appointments. So if you get there early enough, you get in right away and then you can get back. So I kind of did that this morning. I kind of just took a couple hours off, kind of signed out. And I kind of killed 2 birds with one stone. I got a chance to be outside. I'm kind of a car guy. So I went to the car dealership, got my oil change, hung out, looked at some cars, talked to some people. And I came back for this. And it kind of a little bit of balance on both sides. I was able to get outside, get a little fresh air, enjoy the nice weather. Yet I'm still working, most of the day. 6
Yeah,
hours a day,
you know
but-
what that reminds me, Paul? It almost reminds me of that whole mulligan, like giving yourself that little bit of break doesn't mean that it's that you have to, okay, fine. I've been outside. I'm gonna like blow up my whole day of work. So I love that.
Sure.
Thank you for sharing. I love that. I'm glad you're enjoying the outside. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you again. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to, of course, email me. And if you have anything for Denise, let me know and I will send you all of her information. You can find her on LinkedIn. You can find us on LinkedIn and everything else. So have a super, super afternoon. And thank you for being a part of the Growth Club.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys.